probably already know this, but anytime you add a plus to something, you make it that much more awesome. Which is why once I reach 100,000 subs, I'm changing my name to Sean Plus. But you can do the same thing for a major chord, and that's why today we're talking about augmented chords. So if you've ever seen, like on a chord chart or something, like an E chord with a plus on it, what that actually means is E augmented. And the simple version of that is just a major chord with a raised fifth. But we're going to be talking about what that is, how it works, and a few song examples that use it and how you might want to use it in your own arrangements and playing, okay? So when I say it's a raised fifth, all that means if we have a major chord, like let's take A, okay? So an A major chord looks like this, looks like this. All that is an A, a C sharp, and an E. In any order. There's a lot of different voicings for that chord. Now, as soon as we have an A, a C sharp, and we take that E, that fifth, and it's the fifth because it's the fifth note in the major scale from A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If we raise that, that's going to give us an augmented triad. So we have an A, a C sharp, and this raised fifth. This is actually an F note. Some people might call that an E sharp. Right? So that is the sound of an A augmented chord. It's very closely related to kind of like a diminished sound, which we're going to talk a little bit about in a second. But I want to talk about the concept of stacking major thirds on top of each other, okay? So again, just in the major scale, A, B, C sharp, same thing in any major scale, the B major scale. A major third you can always find on the lower strings by going down a string and back a fret. Okay, like a G major chord, those first, the lowest two strings, that's a major third. Now if you go a major third from a major third, it's kind of like major third inception. You get that right there. So this is going to be the first voicing that we learn. This is going to be a G augmented, okay? So let's just take a regular G chord. Now we have a G, it's major third like we just said, down a string, back a fret, G and B. Now usually the D string is open when you play a G major chord. But now if we take this B, add a major third there, B, down a string, back a fret, we get the first fret on the D string. And there's a G augmented, okay? So you might be like, why would I use this chord? By itself it doesn't really sound that great. Well, there's a couple different ways you can use it. You can use it to kind of create a tension, a dissonance that is leading you somewhere. Or you can also use it in like a passing transition type thing, which we're going to talk about both ways. So I think the first way to kind of illustrate that is a popular example of it. There's a Beatles song called Oh Darling that actually starts with just a... That's the first thing that you hear, so it kind of sets up, it's like, oh, tension! And then it gets released, okay? And where it gets released is usually when you perceive whatever the augmented chord is as the 5 chord, it takes you back to the 1 chord. All right? So again, let's talk about that. In the A major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, any of these notes can become chords. So the 5th chord in A, the first chord would be A major, second chord would be B minor, C sharp minor, D major, E major. Okay, so the 5 chord would be E major. Now we can augment that. Technically, we're going outside of the key, right? But we're kind of just adding a note outside of that key to create that tension to bring us back to home, or the 1 chord, all right? So that Beatles song is a great example of kind of starting something out with tension and then instantly kind of getting at it, right? So it can kind of serve as almost like a fake intro just because it instantly is bringing the song somewhere, okay? Now, another more modern example of how it can be used in a transitional passing way is going to be the bridge in the Shawn Mendes song, 3 Empty Words, okay? It sounds something like this. Okay, so what happened there is that we're just going to take a C major chord, all right? An open voiced C major chord. C, it's major third E. We usually have a G, open G, to kind of get that C major triad, right? So there's a C major. Now as soon as we augment that, we raise the 5th at G, 1 fret. C augmented. We can keep going. We're going to chromatically walk this G string from the open to the first fret, to the second fret, to the third fret. Now if we do that over a C chord, we end up getting this C major, C augmented, C6, C7, and again, that's kind of like a cool transitional way to create that tension to get somewhere. And where are we going? To the F, okay? So that's something that you can do from a C to an F. Now we can kind of take that and use that in different keys. We just have to think about how those chords are relative to each other. So again, if we take the notes in the key of F, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. C again is the 5 chord. So that's another way to take a 5 chord and lead it back home to a 1 chord. Just by major, augmented, 6, dominant 7, home. All right? Now, another thing I kind of want to talk about is to eliminate the triadness of this, to kind of maybe see the raised fifth in a different light. So let's just take that A again. And if we take the 5 right here, so A and E, a 1 and a 5 is a power chord. We're not worried about the class of it. It's not going to be major or minor. This technically is not going to be an augmented triad, but the augmented sound of raising a fifth is something I want to talk about. So if we just take this A power chord and we just go from the 5 to the raised 5, we get a very kind of dark sound. Okay? And you can kind of do that with any power chord. So you could kind of call that an augmented thing. Again, it's not an augmented triad, it's not technically, but it's kind of got that raised fifth component into it. Now, the easiest way to kind of see these around there is, like we said, just stacking major thirds on top of each other. So you can kind of staircase a chord voicing. You can take any root note on the lower strings. Again, if you want to make it A augmented, we just take that. We grab this major third, so 5E, 4A, and 3D. We can even move that down a string. This is a movable shape. So there's D augmented. Now, if you want to get maybe a fuller sounding one, you can start adding an octave of the root note. So for this D augmented chord right here, I'm getting 5A, 4D, 3G, and I'm kind of barring to grab another D, so I have an octave D right there to kind of get a little fuller sound, okay? The real interesting thing about this, and this is something that kind of, like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about diminished chords, is if you saw my video on diminished seventh chords, these guys right here, they're movable in a way where they can be perceived as different chords, all right? And again, so if we take an E, a major third from E, now we have been talking about major thirds as far as going on different strings. If we stayed on the same string and played a major third higher than E, we would go 4 frets, okay? Because again, the major scale is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Something you should really know if you don't know. But 4 frets higher on the same string is going to give you a major third. So if we stack that, go 4 frets higher from here, we go from open to 4 to 8. Now if we go 4 frets higher from there, we're right back where we started on another E, an octave E. So the notes of an E augmented chord would be E, G sharp, C. You can keep going. E, G sharp, C. Now, what if we wanted to play like a G sharp augmented chord? Right? We'd start on the G sharp. We'd go 4 frets higher. Well, there's a C. Go 4 frets higher from there. There's an E. 4 frets higher again. That gets us back to G sharp. So really, when you have an augmented triad, any one of those notes can be the root note of the chord, because it's just a different order. The root note would just be lowest. So again, if we take this, let's do the next inversion of that, if you want to look at it like that way. A C augmented chord, again, my root note, I'm thinking of as 3A, 2D, and 1G. If we go 4 frets higher to an E augmented chord, 4 frets higher from that, right there, G sharp. C, E, G sharp. It's all really the same chord, it's just which note is lowest. And a lot of times on guitar, the bass note, the lowest note, is going to be perceived as the root note. But it's just something that you might want to think about. So a lot of times you'll see that people will relate augmented chords to major chords, but I think a really cool thing to do is actually relate them to a minor chord. So let's take this one right here, this E augmented one we did earlier, right? Just staircasing it up. 7A, 6D, 5D. Now a lot of people will be like, okay, well that's just leading me back to an A major, which is true. You know, you definitely hear that. Tension and release. What I think is kind of cool is when I see this shape, what I'm actually thinking, I'm thinking more minor, right? So like a minor chord could be like an A minor, would be 7A, 7D, 5G. A minor, E augmented. So you can really inflect that. On any minor chord. G minor, and then D augmented. It just kind of gives a cool vibe. So a few different ways to use augmented chords. Remember, they're just major thirds stacked on top of each other. A lot of times, traditionally, they'll be used on the 5 chord as a transition to get back to the 1 chord. But really, once you kind of see how they're laid out, use them however you want, however you think it sounds cool. Try to be creative with them. And if you have any questions or comments, hit me up in the comment section, Instagram, Twitter, or the website. And I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks a lot.